team. It's all one for all and all for one. And that's how we win a championship. There's no time for pettiness or backstabbing or upset because you're getting the ball more than I do. It's all got to be an individual mindset is one if we want to win a championship.
I agree.
Yeah, and I agree. And if you look at just the pieces there as far as their coaching staff is D'Antoni, Mamari, and Nash, those three, of course, they came from the team that they all were involved together, coaching and playing. And the Suns of what they were in that time when they were together, and they came together as a team, and what they were, where they were able to take that team from where they were to where they took it, and that time that which was not an easy feat to do, but and now we're back to where we are. But if they take that and put it and apply it here as coaching, that's going to be huge, because that's one of the things that they were able to come together and do and catapult the Suns as far as they did and during that time. So only for the Nets, I can only imagine if they take it that much further.
Yeah, I think they're going to do well. Like, I think a lot of people, they want to criticize people, but I mean, honestly, nothing against Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson is one of the greatest coaches, but he had Jordan, he had Pippen, he had Rodman. Then he goes to the Lakers and he had Shaq and Kobe and and then all of a sudden he goes to the New York Knicks. And again, he wasn't coaching at that particular time, but he didn't have any superstars. And then all of a sudden people criticize him. So to me, if you have great players and you know how to manage men, and typically as a point guard, you know how to manage men, supposedly, I feel like he's going to be great, because you got to understand, he was basically handpicked by Kevin Durant. Like, that's the guy who he wanted. And then not only that, you look at it. Now, I know Amari, but when you say you go and you get your coach, and the coach who basically, he came up with this system. Now, I know when he was at Dallas at first before he went to Phoenix, but he really blew up when he went to Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And it's because this coach saw something in him and turned him into an MVP. You know what I mean? So, like, he's bringing this guy with him, and this guy, ran this offense. And not only that, like, D'Antoni gets, he gets criticized because of his offense. He gets criticized because he can't win in the playoffs.
Yeah. But
we're talking about a coach who was an Olympic assistant coach when they turned everything around. So, and I know Colangelo loves him, Jerry loves him, I get all that. But at the same time, I mean, let's give this man credit. It's just everyone doesn't get to win the championship. And guess what? Maybe that style play didn't work in the playoffs. But there were some pretty good teams, and they lost to some phenomenal teams. You know what I mean? So mm-hmm. I think that the coaching is going to be great. He got a great assistant. I think that people are going to relax. Next thing you know, they're going to say a couple years from now, Steve Kerr is a great coach. I mean, it reminds me of Brad Stevens. People are like, well, who was he? Who's he? And these guys just go there and they do well. And he has a loaded team. I think he's going to be fine.
So, Keith, if they do pull off the deal with the Nets, what do you think Houston's going to ask for?
See, and that's when it gets that's when they better, if they're going to do something, they better hurry up and do it. Well, who they're going to ask for is they're going to ask for Karis LeVert. They're going to ask for Spencer Dinwiddie. They're going to ask for Jarrett Allen, and they're going to ask for Terrence Prince. So that's like 4 guys. Now, the thing about that, they're also for, quote unquote, for their best players, right? Right then and there, like Jarrett Allen's the center. Prince is the energy guy. Spencer Dinwiddie is basically the fringe all-star. And Karis LeVert is like, one of the up-and-comers, like the guy that keeps surprising you because he's so good, but he doesn't get the hype, right? So those are the guys they're going to get. But to me, if I'm Brooklyn, if we're going to do something, let's just do it like quickly, because then I can go out there and go get some free agents, right? Or something like that. I know you're going to, because when you think about it, James Harden contract is so good. I mean, so lucrative to whereas, you probably may not have to, you're probably not going to get as much back as you send out, right? So what you want to do is you want to be able to get some like veterans at low cost to whereas, you know what I mean? They could be fill-ins like how the Miami Heat were the Cleveland Cavaliers. You know what I mean? Like, well, who is dude? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. That's what I think they need to do.
Yeah, and you might as well get James Harden at the apex of his career because that's where he is right now.
Yeah.
And reunite him with Mike D'Antoni.
Yes.
Yeah. He would love that. I know. Yeah, he would love that. He would love that.
Well, those would be some fun games to cover, right, Keith?
Yeah, it will be. And two, but the only thing is if he says to Mike, hey, let's go ISO ball, I can see the other two looking like, nah, not today, bro. Not today. Not today.
And talking a little bit of strategy and moves, let's take it back to the draft. And we had some of that happen here. We have the Bucks. Their pick is going to Denver as a proposed trade. I still don't know if that has been finalized or not. We have the Lakers who drafted Jaden McDaniels from Washington, a good pick. And that pick was going to Minnesota Timberwolves. We have also the Celtics, just to name another team here, that drafted Desmond Bane, that pick going to Memphis. So we saw, a lot of this strategic moves, whether it's the pick and then it's being traded to another team, or picks trading for picks, or, all these sorts of moves happening. Crazy. Mm-hmm. What for you, both Keith and Ed, what was the most strategic move of the draft made by a team and the most promising?
Wow, the most strategic draft made by a team and the most promising. That's a tough one.
You can pick two. If they don't have to be the same team, but let's say if you have to go with two. I know that's a tough one. There were some really good ones out there.
This might sound weird to you just because he was a late second rounder, right? So what the Sixers did is they have a habit of getting late first round talent, right? Late first or late second or second round talent guys who they fill their roster out with, right? And in this instance, it was like a guy by the name of Isaiah Joe, who they really liked. And he was at Arkansas, and he was one of the nation's top 3-point shooters, right? And they waited and waited, and they drafted him at 48. And I know it sounds crazy, but the thing is, he comes in and he fulfills a need. He's going to be a guy that can just hoist up shots. And that's the stuff that they like, right? So that's who I felt like did a good job. Now, again, I know I covered the 76ers and people say I'm biased, but when I look at it, a couple years ago, they drafted a guy by the name of Landry Shamet, right, who played for the Clippers, and he was just traded to the Brooklyn Nets. And when they drafted him, we were saying, like, what are you guys doing? Like, you drafted him like late in the first round. He had a second round grade. Well, he played so well that the Clippers were like, okay, if you guys want Tobias Harris, you got to send us Landry Shamet. That's how good he was. And then a couple years ago with the 58th, that same year with the 58th pick, they drafted a guy by the name of Shake Milton out of SMU. And then Shake Milton last year was their starting point guard when Ben Simmons went down. And he was also their leading scorer during like a stretch without Ben, right? And then last year, they drafted a guy by the name of Matisse Thybulle late in the first round. They promised him, and he was one of their best on-ball defenders. So I'm saying this to say, when I see them do a move like this with Isaiah Joe, it's like some people may say, what are you talking about? But what I see a guy who potentially could be, a star to them,
Right.
Two moves I like. One move that the Knicks made, they got Obi Toppin with the number 8 pick in the draft on Thursday night. I love the way that kid plays basketball. I think he's going to come to New York and fit in well with Tom Thibodeau and that system. I like moves that the New York Knicks made. They did kind of what Daryl Morey did, clearing so much cap space. They cleared like $40 million in cap space, Keith. They let 6 players go. They got rid of those 6 veteran players. They got a ton of cap space. So if they should decide to go for somebody, for some free agents, they can go ahead and do that. And also, I like the fact that the Sacramento Kings at number 12, they got Tyrese Halliburton. This kid was supposed to be at least a number 4 pick. He was going to be one of the top 4 picks, but he fell to number 12. So I think he's going to fit in well with Buddy Hield and De'Aaron Fox out there in Sacramento as another solid guard for the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah.
You kind of mixed it in a little bit in there for me. I was going to go into a good and bad and ugly with this, but you kind of covered a little bit of the good in there. So I'll go ahead and switch it up a little. What was your grade A plus? Who was that? And who was your F? Like, who totally tanked it? And who could have done a little bit better?
I really like what the Brooklyn Nets did. I think they did a great job. Again, see, I sound like a homer. I kind of like, what Sacramento did. I like what the Sixers did just because, and again, it's just because, like, the moves that the Sixers made. See, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, without any shooters, everyone says they might as well be the Crips and the Bloods. You know what I mean? They don't get along. They look at them. There's no space, and people get upset. But the Sixers went out there and got shooters for them. So to me, that was good, right? So I give them, I give them a B for that. But the team that really didn't impress me were the Knicks. Like, it seemed like, like Obi Toppin, I know he was the player of the year, but you already have a bunch of power forwards, or you had, and you go out and you draft another one. And I get it, the guy's from New York. And also he was represented by the agency that, Leon Rose and them used to run. I understand all that. But to me, it's just like, when you draft that high, you have to get it right. You have to go out there. And I know the best player, but you also have to fulfill a need. I mean, that reminds me of when the Sixers drafted centers 3 years in a row, 3 consecutive seasons. You don't do that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you may have an idea, Ed, like, what was your best middle ground and worst?
Probably a questionable one for me. At number 4, Patrick Williams going that high to the Chicago Bulls. I know he's got some upside, the kid coming out of Florida State, but his scoring potential needs some work. He turns the ball over. He turned the ball over way too much down in Tallahassee. So the Chicago Bulls, they've got to work with him on that. But there's upside for him, but that remains to be seen, especially with a month to go until the season starts. We'll see how Patrick works into that system with Chicago. So that would be kind of my iffy, good, too bad. Could be good, could be bad.
Your A plus?
A plus for me is James Wiseman. I know he only had 3 games in Memphis, but the kid has a tremendous upside, especially with Golden State. He feels the need that they need a young man at the center position that can block shots, that can affect the way the opposition plays against them. So I like James Wiseman. We'll see. Penny worked with him as much as he could before those eligibility issues came up down there in Memphis. But I think James Wiseman is going to fit in there well, and we'll see what happens. Kelly Oubre, that could be that is a potential. That's going to be a really good move for Golden State should they make that deal, especially with Klay Thompson being out for the season. That's the guy that they needed some scoring punch, because Klay was going to be that guy to complement Steph Curry, but he's out for the season. So that's not a draft move, but it's still. That's a free agent move. So if you want to slide a free agent move inside of the decision for draft picks, I would say Kelly Oubre. That's a good one for me. And James Wiseman is probably an A move for me for Golden State.
Before I actually jump into this this last segment, let me go ahead and let our wonderful, amazing person who hasn't joined us in a while, but PLR. He is jumping on, so I want to go ahead and get his take on it, because I know he's going to have plenty to say on this.
Not wearing a blackout.
Hello, my friend. Just
What's
in
happening?
time, right before we wrap up for our last
What's up,
segment.
bro?
What's going on? Sorry. You know what? I was like,